allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have approval of the minutes from our last meeting and operating statements, please.
I make a motion that we approve the operating statement, the June 17, 2013 council meeting minutes, July 8, 2013 work session minutes, and Quantum's financial statement for June 2013.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, ayes?
Aye.
No, same. Motion is carried. Okay, according to our agenda, we have Commissioner Rothschild next, but I'm going to change the agenda just a little bit. And we have some guests here tonight. We have a young lady that was one of the, how many did we have from Elmer Wolf this year? 28?
20 couple, I don't remember
I think
exactly.
we had
how many.
28 applicants this year that participated in If I Were Mayor contest. That's the most we've had yet. And so what we did here at the office, even though you did not win to go to Annapolis to meet the governor and the people in Annapolis, as far as I'm concerned, you are here with us in Union Bridge tonight, and don't let anybody tell you that municipal government is the best form of government. So if you would come forward, I would like to present you with something. We read the 28 contest forms, and we chose you as number one, and you want to be presented as Maddie Snyder. And what we have here is a $25 gift certificate for you. We have a certificate of recognition. This certificate is presented in recognition for your outstanding essay for the 2013 If I Were Mayor contest. The mayor and council read all the essays entered by Elmer Wolf Elementary and chose yours as the top essay. So we're glad to give you this. And this is a book, the Maryland Municipal League, that we put together back in 2000, and it has all 157 municipalities and towns in it. And we'd like to present that to you. It says presented to Madeline Snyder this 22nd day of July of 2013. And I signed it, Metcalf signed it, clerk treasurer, and all the council members signed it. And these are very precious books, and it gives you time to sit down and read about every town and municipality in Carroll County. So thank you very much. We're going to put that on the town's website. Thank you very much. Just to let you in on it, the last 2 years, this is the second year in a row that someone from, I think the winner this year, last year was from Piney Run Elementary. This year was from Hampstead.
Last year was a special year, and they had an overall winner, and the young lady from Piney Ridge won out of the entire state as the overall winner. This year, they just did the districts. So I think there's 11 or 12 districts. So they had one winner from each district, but they didn't choose that overall winner this year. It was a special year last year because it was like their 10th anniversary or something like that.
So we're very proud to have you participate, and we hope that we have more children next year. This is the biggest group we've had so far, this year's class. And I know when I was up to the school, there was a lot of questions asked by, and I think you were one of the young ladies that had a lot of questions that day. So that's good. And I think what happened in Frederick, the young lady that won in Frederick City actually called the mayor and I think hung out with the mayor a day just to see what the mayor did up there. Of course, the mayor's job in Frederick's a lot bigger than what it is in Union Bridge here, but anytime you want to come and participate, we would be glad to have you. And I think we should even maybe sometime in the future have you come back and sit up here and run a council meeting for us. How would that be? Would that be okay? Would you like to do that? I think so. Well, I'll get with Dawn and we'll come up with a date and we'll have you come back and you can run a council meeting for us one night. We'll help you along with it, okay? Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, while we're there, we'll go down. That's about all that I have on the mayor's report. I think we have some other issues. We have the Shriner Court Apartments proposed budget for the next fiscal year. We have to take action on this. We do it every year as far as their proposed budget for 2013-14. I think all the council has had time to read over it. If they have any questions, I think it looks very good, Bonnie. I think all the questions, no one had any questions that I know of, so I think if the council would like to make a motion to pass this year's budget for Shriner Court Apartments.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposals for the budget for Shriners Court.
Okay. We have
I'll
a-
second that motion.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, ayes?
Aye.
Noes? Okay, motion's carried. Thank you, Bonnie. That's a very good report. Okay, I'm gonna let you bring up about crime night out, national night out, okay? Okay, we're gonna go to the attorney's report. John?
Okay, I have just one thing briefly to report that's not on the agenda, but I think we did report that the developer at Jackson Ridge had asked for a meeting, and the mayor and I, in fact, met with them on July 11th. And the purpose of the meeting was that they would like to revisit the last working draft of the Public Works Agreement, which is going to have to be revisited anyway because that agreement was recommended by the Planning Commission back in spring of 2007. And then some of you may recall that I made a report on it back in June or so of 2007. Which was really had already run into the time that the market had sort of dropped out on the developer. So we were continuing, I think, with the maybe the optimistic approach that the market would spring back quickly. Obviously, that didn't happen, so we've got a draft. We never had a public works agreement. We had a draft that was being negotiated, recommended by the Planning Commission. And it had a number of things in it, some of which I think from the town side will have to be revisited, but also the developer would like to revisit some of the things that they didn't agree with even at the time. So what had been recommended was not satisfactory to them at the time. I think the main issue is probably taking another look at the wastewater treatment plant and how that can be replaced. There were some standards in the Public Works Agreement that did not suit the developer and still wouldn't suit the developer. However, I guess since then, you all are, I think, generally aware there's been a visit down to the New Windsor facility. There's been some talk of an alternate plant different than what had been proposed, which was about a $15 million plant. Proposed in the Stearns and Wheeler report from back prior to 2007. So the developer expressed a willingness to explore retaining an engineer at his expense to present back to the town alternatives. And we've had concerns about maintenance expenses and just a whole range of things that we explain to them. The council relies heavily on the expertise of our operator or our engineers, so they would more than likely go back to the experts first before it came back to council or the Planning Commission on that issue. The other thing we've learned since then is that the assumption back in 2007 was that the entire plant was in floodplain. And in the update of the FEMA maps, we discovered that the plant itself, the structure, is actually above the floodplain. which opens up, I guess, or reopens the possibility that the plant could be upgraded or replaced in that location without having to acquire other land. So there'll be a whole bundle of issues to deal with, assuming they want to make the effort, time, and expense of digging back into the Public Works Agreement. I guess we left them with the impression that, the town's been here all this time, and, we're more than willing to listen to what they have to say, but it's they're going to have to incur the expense of revisiting and if we're going to restructuring. And we also made it clear that at this point, it would probably start back down with the Planning Commission again, because it has been so long before it came back to you. The purpose of this is just to report that all of that occurred and the discussion occurred. They told us that they would give us sort of a markup of that Public Works Agreement with comments as to the things they'd like to look at, and we haven't seen that yet. We haven't seen any evidence that I know of that they have in fact retained an engineer to look at alternatives to the plant. So it's, my guess is, like everything else in the development world on that scale, it will move slowly, but I think they believe that there's some market, bouncing back in the future, and they know this is going to take time. So we'll probably see some activity, and of course we'll keep the council posted on that.
Okay.
Perry, I don't know if you had anything else to add to
I think
that.
it was a pretty good meeting. I mean, we're back almost to square one, but at least there's some talk there anyway. So I guess, I know back when that piece of property was annexed, we had people on Phillips Lane concerned that we were going to have houses there. And I told the one gentleman, I said, look, we'll probably all be dead before that happens. And by golly, about 3 of them that lived there are gone now. So I'll probably be dead too till it happens, but I hope not. But it's something to think about, a little encouragement for the town. We do need some residential growth in the area, and I think our infrastructure, other than the water and sewer, is pretty good. So our schools are pretty good shape right now. So it's a positive. The rest of the county is built up, so sooner or later you're going to have to build in Union Bridge because there's nowhere else to build. So providing we don't run them out of town with water and sewer or stormwater rain tax. Okay, I have to excuse myself, but would you like to introduce Maddie? Would your father and your parents, or would like to come up and introduce yourselves? Because I'm sorry I forgot to do that, but if you'd like to come up and use the microphone and introduce yourselves. I know you must be very proud of this young lady right now.
I'm Brian Snyder. I'm Maddie's father, and this is Maddie's twin sister.
Okay. Very nice to have you here tonight. Thank you.
I'm Maddie's mom. My name is Danielle, and this is Maddie's youngest sibling, Hazel.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you for having her here this evening.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
If there was just a minute, would Maddie be able to share
Yes.
some
Yes.
the idea that she had? She prepared.
Yes.
I'm her grandfather, Leonard Hadley, of Union Bridge.
Oh, okay, great. So, Maddie, you want to use the microphone and tell us why you're here in case something happens you have to.
Yeah, she's coming.
Yes, you can.
Well, I'm Maddie, and for 4th grade, I made an essay on what I would do if I were mayor. Do you want me to share what I have?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, my dad has a garden that I've been helping him with, and in there he grew some garlic that I helped him harvest. He has a cucumber plant, and he's also been growing a lot of herbs, like mint, thyme, and lavender. So that's what I have for that.
What was the idea, Maddie?
My idea for my essay was to start a community garden, which was why I brought the plants.
That's a very good idea. We talked about that years ago, and I think that if if I think we have to look a little harder and find a place for that, because I know there are communities that do have that. And I think it would be a good idea, especially with people being more, I guess, talking about diets and everything today, conscious about what they eat. I think a lot more people would probably have a garden if they had a place to have it. And just riding around town like I do, I have a couple places in mind that I'm going to have to check with some property owners and see if we can't make that available. But I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Okay, that was in for John. Okay, Jared, we'll take care of you.
Everyone should have my full report in front of them, but I would like to highlight a few areas. On the top here for our community development block grant, we were able to get the City of Westminster Public Works Department to come out and camera the sewer line. So that was very, very nice of them to do that for us. And it was pretty good news. Richard was there, the project engineer, and he was able to look, view the whole thing, view the tape and everything. And the sewer line looks good, just like the first phase of the West Broadway looked even a little better. So we're okay to leave that as is. Now we still need to do the water line and the rest of the planned project. But as far as the sewer line, which we weren't sure, we were on the fence about, that looks good. So that's good news, and we'll be able to save some money doing that. So, also, we were able to submit our state highway application for the trail extension. Don and I have been down there doing a lot of work as far as measurements. We are kind of still in the works to decide what wetlands areas we're going to have to possibly go over and what areas we can avoid. So I'm working closely with the state, Don, with that, and so we should have an answer soon. I'm trying to see if we can use the same delineation from the 2000 project that we did when the wetlands were created. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that yet or not. We may have to get someone else out here to do that, but I will let you know as soon as I know.
Okay.
And also, we are currently doing the community parks and playgrounds application for the extension as well. So that's going well, and that's due, I believe, the 14th.
All right.
Okay. And also, lastly, the USDA Community Facilities Grant. I've been also working with Don on that. I've been able to get all my research finished, and that is hopefully going to be for a new truck for the town, or I believe a one-time truck for the town. They do provide up to 75% of a grant for that, so a pretty large chunk to get a new vehicle. So I'm still doing some research on that. I will keep everyone updated on what I find. It'll be a pretty quick turnaround if we do want to get the application in, but we can definitely do it. So I will definitely keep everyone updated on that.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for me?
I don't. Anybody else?
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair. Okay, at this time, before we go to public comments and concerns, we're going to have Commissioner Rothschild. He has a presentation for us, because after this presentation, we may have more questions. So we'll wait till we see Commissioner Rothschild's presentation here.
I think we'll do this. Good evening, everybody. Commissioner Rothschild, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you very much for having me. Mark Twain had an interesting quote that struck me as quite applicable to government. He said, "It's easier to fool a man than to convince them that he's been fooled." And I've been very, very upset over the misinformation that I see coming out of our state government, and specifically the Maryland Department of the Environment and the Maryland Department of Planning. Carroll County is one of the founding 7 members of a new organization statewide called the Clean Chesapeake Coalition. It's 7 counties, and our goal is the same as to the state government, which is to see the Chesapeake Bay and our water quality cleaned up. But we want to see it done in a way that's cost effective so it doesn't bankrupt us all and drive our towns into economic hardship. So today, I probably should have named this presentation the presentation that the state doesn't want you to see, but I think you'll find it very interesting. Before I start, I do want to encourage everyone to try to move to the left. There's a couple good seats up here where you can see the presentation. Because I think over there in the rear, you're going to have a hard time seeing. You might want to come up here. It'll be easier to see the presentation. So then I'm going to go ahead and get started.
We can put one row of lights out if you like.
Yeah, we should turn out the one row. Maybe it's front
Right
row.
behind,
Yeah, that's perfect. Because I do have some photographs and satellite imagery I want you to see. Let's go ahead and get into this. I want to talk about, give you an overview of the rain tax, known as HB 987, how it came about, the role of counties versus towns, what we can do and what our alternatives are with respect to this rain tax, some problems with the state's approach, and this is quite extensive, and I'm going to take the time to go through it, and then recommendations. First off, Carroll County Board of Commissioners does have its own set of environmental principles, and this is very important from a legal standpoint, because federal regulations require the state to work cooperatively with the local governments, county and towns, so as not to create hardship. And if you look here, let me grab a laser. This works. Here we go. Look here, one of the things we say is we want to promote land use planning and development concepts and practices that support our citizens' health, safety, well-being, individual rights, and the economic viability of Carroll County. And you should be aware that in federal regulations, when it talks about the human environment, when you read the definitions, the human environment includes our property rights, it includes our economy, it includes the social structure of our communities, our businesses. So it doesn't just mean trees and air and water. HB 987, which is the bill that created the rain tax, requires a county or town subject to an NPDES Phase 1 MS4 permit. For those of you up here on the council, I don't believe any of our towns are NPDES Phase 1 MS4 permits. I think you're Phase 2 at this point in time. Phase 1 is large to medium-sized water and sewer treatment plants for jurisdictions over 100,000 people. Since Union Bridge is clearly smaller than that, you don't qualify under this, which means, quite frankly, the whole rain tax bill doesn't really even affect you at this point in time. Okay? But the bill does require the county to adopt and implement laws to establish a watershed protection and restoration program, which is the fancy way of saying to control our stormwater, our rain that comes off our roofs and our driveways. It says that the county or the town shall maintain or administer a watershed protection fund. It says the fee will be collected annually from property owners based on the amount of impervious surface. Impervious surface is defined as a surface that does not absorb water, concrete, asphalt, or roof. And it has some exemptions for government buildings and volunteer fire departments. The bill gives us several ways of setting a fee at the county level. We can go with a flat rate, a graduated rate that's tied to the amount of impervious surface, or another method selected by the county or town. What the Carroll County Board of Commissioners did was the following. We said, you know what, we already have $20 million allocated in our capital program. We're going to take that $20 million and move it into a specific fund earmarked for stormwater remediation. Call it the Stormwater Remediation Fund. We're not going to raise taxes on our citizens that are already suffering. And that's what we did. So we really did not implement the tax, but we did allocate the funds. And we're still in a waiting mode to see whether or not the state government is going to declare us to be in compliance at this point in time. And it also says the property owners affected must have an appeal process. And for those of you who are not government wonks, NPDES is an acronym for National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit. It's just a fancy way of saying the water that comes out of your drains, it comes out of your wastewater treatment plants. That's what this NPDES permit regulates. How did this come about? An opportunity about 6 months ago to sit through a very interesting meeting of county officials. I'm not going to be specific about where it took place, but one of the representatives from an urban county stood up and said that she didn't want to have to raise taxes in her county. It would be much easier if the state would mandate it, because this would give them a way of raising taxes at the county level while maintaining plausible deniability. Now, I was upset by that comment, and I stood up and I said, what we have in this room is not a lack of taxes. What we have in this room is a lack of integrity by people that ran for office and then don't want to take responsibility for their own actions. If you're going to raise taxes, then raise them. If you're not going to take responsibility, try to push it onto somebody else and you can say you had to do it, well, that's a form of dishonesty. And I expressed that at this meeting of county officials. The role of the county versus the town. HB 987 only applies to Phase 1 MS4 counties and towns. MS4 stands for separate storm water or something or other. It's for small towns that have a separate storm water management system. It could be a town, it could even be an army base. That's all MS4 has to, that's all MS4 really means is a stormwater treatment facility or something like that. Carroll County falls under this permit, but our towns do not, because you do not have a population of 100,000. If you're Baltimore City, you'd fall under what we know. Now, so Carroll County or any Phase 1 MS4 county can pass a fee, but it cannot impose it on Phase 1 MS4 towns without providing the town a reasonable time to pass its own fee ordinance. But again, Union Bridge, at this point in time, you're not under a Phase 1 MS4 permit, correct? Right, you're under Phase 2, Amy, is that correct? Phase 2. So it technically does not apply at this point in time. And if you don't like the tax that the county commissioners put into effect, then you have a right to say, no, we don't want to implement it in our town, we're going to do our own. Now, I'm making this an issue because there was some very bad information in the Carroll County Times a week or two ago after a meeting between some of our commissioners of the towns where one of the mayors made a comment, or town manager said they were causing all kinds of problems for the town. Well, that's ridiculous, because the bottom line is the town has absolute sovereignty. We can pass a tax, and you can adopt it or not adopt it. And if you choose not to adopt it, then you can implement your own at whatever level and whatever algorithm you want to use. So nothing the county does ties the hands of the town. And I want to make that clear, because that was incorrectly reported in the newspapers. Another interesting clause in here, it's interesting how this plays out, is it says that counties or towns may establish a program to exempt properties that are able to demonstrate substantial financial hardship as a result of the fee. I don't know what constitutes substantial financial hardship. It'll be interesting to see whether they exempt huge sections of Baltimore City, for example, from this, which of course is the major source of this kind of stormwater runoff that we're concerned about. So what do we do? What can we do? Well, currently the county, and I think every town has its own National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit from the EPA. The permits our towns currently have, however, are not yet subject to this law, because I believe you have Phase 2 while we have Phase 1. So what are the options right now for the county? Well, one option is comply and cry. We do what the state wants. We take our licking and continue to raise sewer and water rates, continue to crush our businesses, impact our car washes, our restaurants, our water-intensive industries, our laundromats. The second option is to consolidate the permits so that the whole county and all the towns only operates under one master permit. I personally think that's unlikely to happen. I would be shocked if the Board of Commissioners would support that. I'm not going to get into the details for that right now. The third option is to comply in a way consistent with Carroll County's objectives and Carroll County's values and principles, and seek agreement from the state. That's where we are right now, is number 3. That's what we're trying to do. We said, this is what we've done. We want to be good players. We want to be good stewards of the environment, but you're going to crush us if we do it your way. We're going to do it our way. And then the fourth option, which hopefully will not be necessary, but I will talk about, is assume an adversarial position, but only if the state pushes us into that position. Facts you should know. This is where it gets very interesting. These are the slides that nobody at Annapolis wants you to see. We've spent about $150,000 working in the World Coalition with several law firms and gathering data. The Conowingo Dam is the ticking time bomb that's doing the most damage to the Chesapeake Bay right now. It's putting millions of tons of sediment into the bay after every tropical storm. And I'll show you what that's doing in just a second, because I have a picture of that. I'd like everybody to make sure you can see that picture. My batteries are going dead. Right there. You see it right here on the right? See that brown plume right there? That's the entire Chesapeake Bay right there, that brown plume. That occurred, I think this picture was taken 1 or 2 days after Tropical Storm Lee in 2011. Here's what's happened. The Conowingo Dam was built 120 feet deep. Now it's filled up about 80 to 90% of the way with about approximately 100 feet of sludge and nutrient-rich sediment. Every time there's a violent tropical storm, the waters come down the Susquehanna River, high rates of speed, create a scouring effect, lots of turbulence right in front of that dam, on the north side of that dam, that stirs up all these nutrients, and millions of tons of, batteries out, millions of tons of sediment come through that dam and create this brown plume all the ways down the Chesapeake, all the ways down to near Norfolk. You see that brown, everybody see that brown plume? As that sediment settles in the bay, it does two very, very damaging things. One, it smothers the submerged aquatic vegetation, which is imperative for the bay's health. And two, it smothers all of the oyster beds. A single oyster can filter 50 gallons of water a day, 50 gallons a day, and remove the nitrogen pollutants from it. Every time there's a tropical storm, we're losing our oyster beds. The oysters are the bay's natural filtration mechanism. If we don't fix this problem, then what we're engaged in right now is we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try to remove the nutrients from the bay with an eyedropper. Yet every time there's a tropical storm, millions of tons of pollution come over that dam and wipe out all of our savings. Kind of like trying to mop up the water in your basement while somebody else has got a fire hose pointed, filling it up at the same time. It is an exercise in futility. And this is why we haven't seen any improvement in the bay water over the last several years. And I'll give you statistics on that in a minute. Let me move something here. I think something is blocking. There we go. Okay. Okay. Now it's going to get more interesting. I think this data was derived from the U.S. Geological Service. This is the annual total nitrogen load sources. And you'll see something very interesting. On the left side, second from the left, you see the Susquehanna River, 71,000 tons a year. But look over here on the far right. Stormwater is a real tiny fraction of that. And even to the left, septic is a tiny fraction of that. And to the left of that, wastewater treatment plants are a tiny fraction of that. We are spending billions of dollars of your taxpayer money on these three items on the right, but the mother load is coming from the left side of this chart, primarily the Susquehanna River and agriculture. Anybody find that interesting? In other words, we could eliminate 100% of those last three things. It's not going to measurably improve the bay, but it will destroy the human condition. Because we'd have to raise your water and sewer rates to probably 10 times what they are right now to get rid of all three of those things on the right side there. Is it prudent and fiscally responsible with the MDE and the MDP, the Maryland Department of the Environment, the Maryland Department of Planning, what they're doing? Well, we're spending $7 billion on stormwater through 2025. That means we will spend $3,354 to remove 1 pound of nitrogen. $3,000 to remove 1 pound of nitrogen under the state's approach. Now, just to put that in perspective, a single feral cat, a stray cat that roams around Baltimore City, puts 3 pounds of nitrogen into the bay every year. I made a comment down in Annapolis. I said, you might as well go after the feral cats. It would be cheaper. I figure every cat's worth about $10,000 using this kind of approach.
We got a bunch we'll give you from Union Bridge.
There you go. Septic systems, the septic initiatives, where we're putting all these best available technology septic requirements, $2,991 per pound. And even the wastewater treatment plants, $25,000 to remove 1 pound of phosphorus. Okay, this is insanity, ladies and gentlemen. This is insanity. I come from the private sector. I've never been in government until 2 years ago. And this is why my liberal opponents hate me, because I make decisions based on facts. This is insane. This is a formula for destruction, economic destruction. We'll run out of money before we fix the problem. So one of the things that we did, in addition to putting that $20 million into the Bay Restoration Fund, is four of the five commissioners voted to include something called a summary of 23 concerns that I wrote with assistance from Commissioner Frazier. The only commissioner to dissent was Commissioner Howard. And I outlined 23 things that the state was doing that were a concern. so that if we have to go to court, we have a basis for defending ourselves. Otherwise, we can keep raising your water and sewer rates until you can't afford to take a bath. All right, let's go through. I want to show you examples of some of these concerns so you can get an idea of how fundamental they are. First off, in Virginia versus the EPA, there's already been a lawsuit filed by Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General. He won, and the judge noted that the EPA cannot issue regulations directing states what they must do with stormwater. Quote, EPA may not regulate something over which it has no statutorily granted power as a proxy for something over which it is granted power. And the judge determined that stormwater is not a pollutant. This case just took place a few months ago in Virginia. Here we're trying to tax it, and we got a Virginia judge saying it's not even a pollutant. Second, smart growth may not be so smart. I'm going to show you pictures because a picture's worth 1,000 words. And third, here's an interesting thing. We're going after impervious surface, which raises an interesting question. How much of our surface in Carroll County is asphalt or roofs? Well, guess what? After taking out state roads, it's only 4%. In other words, approximately 95 to 96% of the land mass in Carroll County is just trees and grass and natural habitat. You know, the water that runs down most of your downspouts, if you live outside of the town, it doesn't end up in a river. It gets absorbed by your lawns in many cases. This is smart growth. Montgomery County. This is the Kentlands taken from, I think, 700 feet. You see all the gray? Those are roofs and roads. The impervious surface ratio of this smart growth community probably exceeds 50%. And there have been scientific studies already that state that once an impervious surface ratio exceeds 25%, it's definitely a problem. And when it exceeds 10%, it might be a problem. And I've got the data from that study, but not in this presentation. This is Mount Airy's preferred funding area right around the town. Impervious surface ratio of less than 25%. In other words, 75% of this land is green. It has very low runoff. Now here's the bad guy that the Maryland Department of Planning has been attacking for the last 5 years. This is Taylorsville from, I think, 1,100 feet satellite data. This is considered sprawl by the Maryland Department of Planning. It has an impervious surface ratio of less than 10%. It's all green. There's no runoff. The rain that comes down the downspout of a house there gets absorbed by the trees and the lawn. It never makes it into a water body. And most of these people that developed this land had to grade their property in such a way that there would not be runoff anyway. Okay, more of the 23 concerns. This is very important. What I'm going to tell you is no one's going to tell you this. I'm probably one of the first elected officials, certainly on the East Coast, to tell you this. John, pay close attention. This was on. Whereas Maryland receives funding from the federal government to achieve compliance with the Federal Clean Air and Clean Water Acts, it is thereby bound by federal requirements, both regulatory and statutory. That is a fact. Number two, whereas the MDE and MDP policies do not comply with standards required by the Federal Data Quality Act that requires federal agencies to issue information quality guidelines ensuring the quality, utility, objectivity, and integrity of information that they disseminate and provide mechanisms for affected persons to correct such information. Now, I've gotten into arguments with Secretary Hall over his data, comparing nitrate loads of a house on an acre of land versus a house on a court. They dismiss us. There's no attempt to correct the flawed data they gave us. Whereas policies of the MDE and MDP do not comply with Section 101B of the National Environmental Protection Act, that's a typo, National Environmental Protection Act, NEPA, that states, quote, it is the continuing responsibility of the federal government to use all means consistent with other essential considerations of national policy to avoid environmental degradation, okay, preserve historic, cultural, and natural resources and promote the widest range of beneficial uses of the environment without undesirable and unintentional consequence. One undesirable and unintentional consequence is when a laundromat goes out of business because it can't afford water, or a restaurant goes out of business in New Windsor because it can't afford water. They have to consider the economic effects, and that is right in this section of the federal regulations because I have read it. Whereas the MDE and MDP have relied on computer models that lack transparency and sub-watershed accuracy, and have applied these models in a way that exceed their intended purpose and resolution. If you talk to anyone from MDE, they will admit that these models that the state is using were designed only to estimate the total pollution loads for the entire Chesapeake Bay. They were never intended, they never had the resolution to separate out Carroll versus Frederick versus Hartford versus Baltimore County, much less Union Bridge versus New Windsor versus Mount Airy. This is ridiculous. They're making this stuff up. And when we ask for information on how they calibrate these computer models, we don't get it. In fact, we've PIA'd them using the Public Information Act, Freedom of Information Act. We do not get answers to our questions. And that is a violation of the Federal Data Quality Act when they do that. Applying a new stormwater runoff fee would amount to double jeopardy for property owners and development that already comply with runoff abatement regulations, requiring stormwater to be contained within an owner's property, either through grading or stormwater management ponds. Here we make builders and developers spend tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to control stormwater. Now we're going to tax them again on it. It's a form of double jeopardy. This is the one that drives me crazy the most. They talk about implementing a fee based on the square footage of the impervious surface. The assumption is that if you have a bigger roof, you're more of a problem, but it's really not true. The extent to which you're a problem is a function of the percentage of your land that's impervious. If I have a 1,000 square foot house sitting on a 2,000 square foot lot, I don't have a whole lot of land to absorb the water. But if I got a 3,000 square foot colonial sitting on a 120,000 square foot lot, it's only an impervious surface ratio of about 2%. Water's going to be absorbed. So what we say is here that they have failed to apply fees. It's scientifically invalid and can in no way be correlated to the amount of stormwater runoff, giving exigent factors including but not limited to topology, subterranean geology, quantity and quality of surrounding soil permeability, vegetation, intensity of rainfall, aggregate rainfall levels, and structures that impede or block movements of stormwater or groundwater. What we're simply saying is to just assume that your stormwater is evil because it runs off your roof. That's not fair. We don't know what happens to it. I joke around, I say, when does it become evil? When it falls out of the sky? When it comes off your roof? When it comes down your downspout? When it goes across your driveway? At what point does it become evil? They're not accounting for this stuff. They're getting by. We're letting the MDE slide with these superficial explanations, but when you get down to the science, and I do have a scientific background, I used to be an engineer, I realized this stuff wouldn't survive a 6th grade analysis. Let's keep going. They have not successfully addressed the most likely source of bay water quality, which is the Conowingo Dam. And I've already talked about how that sludge is killing the oyster beds and the submerged aquatic vegetation, which is necessary for the bay's health. Next bullet. They've used flawed, misleading models when comparing nitrate loads. They've tried to argue that septic systems cause more damage in wastewater treatment plants. They have no data to prove that a septic system in the outskirts of Union Bridge causes damage to the bay. They don't know it. They can only conjecture it. And their models do not include things such as infiltration and exfiltration of failing underground sewer lines that release raw sewage directly into the ground. Leakage, in other words. That's not in their models. They fail to properly account for millions of gallons of raw sewage overflows annually from wastewater treatment plants. In Howard County, we had a 10 million gallon raw sewage overflow a year or two ago. They're not in their models. And if we're going to do a comparison and use it to control growth, let's make it honest. Let's not ignore those components that are inconvenient to your preconceived conclusions. So what is the MDE's approach to solving the bay problem? Well, I've put a label on it. Here's what I say their de facto approach is. Their de facto approach to cleaning up the bay, of attempting to do everything, everywhere, at any price, has clearly proven to be a failed strategy, and it is bankrupting us. And I say that based on the facts that the oyster harvest north of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge has fallen to zero. Zero oysters harvested north of the Chesapeake Bay now, compared to 2 million bushels a year 30 years ago. And 30 years of programs have yielded minuscule improvements to bay water quality. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation in 2013 came out with a rating of the bay on a 1 to 100 scale. Anybody want to guess what the rating was? A 32 on a scale of 1 to 100. This is after pouring billions of dollars into the state's approach of everything, everywhere, at any price. Almost done. They have failed, the state has failed to apply sound, verifiable, scientific, and economic facts, and has therefore created a regulatory environment for Carroll County that can only be characterized as arbitrary and capricious. There are no facts to back up the state's conclusions, only conjectures and models that are not transparent. The state has inappropriately removed tens of millions of dollars from the Bay Restoration Fund. Why are they taking money out of the Bay Restoration Fund if this is the highest priority and they want us to raise your taxes? And by the way, for those of you who don't know, the Maryland Department of Transportation 2012 plan in the appendix states that it has the state's intentions of requiring us to put GPS tracking devices on your cars. So that every time you pull into a gas station, you'll be assessed a per mileage fee in addition to gas taxes. That's what the state has in store, all under the guise of saving the bay. So these attacks on our freedoms are just beginning. And here's the most important thing. Whereas Congress has directed that the state has an obligation to respect the important role that local government has in planning and policy making. Congress has said that. The state's actions violate federal regulations, including but not limited to those contained in the Clean Water Act, which require the state to cooperate with local governments such as Carroll County so as not to damage the fundamental elements of our human and natural environment. And that includes our built environment, such as our buildings, and must use a government-to-government dialogue to reach consistency between federal plans and actions and local plans and actions. They have not done this. They've said to us, you will do this or else. They have put us in a position where they're using coercion and threats against us, and they have not treated us as equals with issues with regard to complying with the Clean Water Act. Whereas in accordance with the policies, concerns, and issues clearly denoted above, it's self-evident the state of Maryland, operating under the auspices of the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act, has yet to properly consider the effect of its policies on the human environment in Carroll County and on Carroll County governing policies. And that human environment includes your business, your ability to maintain your home, and our economy. So can we resist? Well, nobody wants to get into a fight with the state. They have more money, they have more resources. However, if we are forced to defend ourselves, we do have the ability to expose the flawed policies of the government that will not, the state government, that will not pass scientific, economic, and legal muster. And we do believe that we can demonstrate they have violated federal regulations by failing to coordinate these mandates with us. Recommendations. Each town must decide whether to implement or not implement a fee, a rain tax, in other words. But there's an old saying, you know, we want to work with our towns. We're all part of the Carroll County family. We don't want to leave our towns to fend for their own either. But there is a saying, if you want to mine diamonds, you go to a diamond mine. Well, if you want to mine stormwater, you find places where there's lots of asphalt. Well, that's in our towns, because you tend to have denser development, shopping centers in some cases like Westminster, smaller lots. And there may be economies of scale associated with focusing the majority of the county's stormwater efforts within our town boundaries. This is very important. Why would I focus on a rural area where I got a 95% permeable ratio, only 5% impervious surface ratio, when I go into a town like New Windsor or Union Bridge where the ratio is much higher and get more bang for my buck? But we have a problem. Since you all have a different permit than we have, if we spend our money inside of Union Bridge, we can't get credit towards our NPDES permit. See what I'm saying? So we need to work with the state, and one of the things we need to do is go back to the state and say, look, we'd rather mine diamonds where the diamonds are. Instead of Carroll County worrying about some farm up in Manchester, let's focus all of our energy inside of a town like Union Bridge or New Windsor. But if we do that, you've got to give us some of the credits towards the renewal of our NPDES permit. But if you do that, we could get a bigger bang for the buck by focusing on where the asphalt is rather than focusing on rural areas of the county where there's very little return on investment. Does that make sense? Okay. If the state doesn't cooperate, there's only two options: raise taxes or demand policies that respect real-world science and economics. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll speak for myself and Commissioner Frazier, raising taxes is not an option. I'm not going to do it. I'll fight in court before I will raise taxes. That's my position. Final thoughts. After decades of mandates and billions of dollars, in 2013, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation rated the Bay a 32 on a scale of 100. Maryland's cleanup policies have clearly failed. It is time to approach the problem in a way that employs sound science and sound economics, and do this scientifically and stop playing these games for political purposes like the state is playing. And to quote myself, the only way to clean up the Bay is to employ a cost-benefit analysis, figuring out where we're going to get the biggest improvement for the least amount of money, employ a cost-benefit analysis, and focus our money like a laser beam onto only those projects that will lead to the greatest level of improvement for the buck to the Bay. If we continue to squander our money willy-nilly everywhere in the state, we're going to have the same discussion 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is going to rate the Bay a scale of 33 on the scale of 100 instead of 32. We should be trying to get that 32 up to 62 in the next 5 years, not 33 or 34. We will not get there unless we only spend money on projects that are really going to make a difference in improving the Bay water quality. And we'll simply have to keep raising taxes until you can't afford to pay them, and it'll destroy our small towns like Union Bridge, New Windsor, and Mount Airy. That's it. Thank you.
Richard, I have a question. About probably the last 5 or 6 years, every resident, every parking lot, every shopping center that's been built in the county through their stormwater management, just say, for instance, if I was to build a brand-new home in Union Bridge today, or if I build a brand-new home outside of town on a 3-acre farm, that rainwater that comes off of the roof of that house is supposed to go through a rain spouting and goes into a pit, just like a dry pit, that everybody that builds a new house has to put on their own property right now, and they've been doing that for the last 5 or 6 years. That costs them money to do that.
Absolutely.
And so we're already a step ahead of the game,
That's right.
and they still want to tax us for something that we're already doing.
That's right. I mean, Mayor, you nailed it. I mean,
You
we're
know.
saying this doesn't make any, what you're really saying is it doesn't make sense.
Right. You know, and I told the
Doesn't make
council,
sense.
you know, a couple of weeks ago that the same thing you said about the Conowingo Dam, you know, how much of a fall we had years ago when it was built and how much sediment's in there right now. Seems that they need to put more money there, and they need to make Pennsylvania pay up for what they've done to us. Because most of that come from the Susquehanna, and the Conowingo is coming out of Pennsylvania. And they don't have to abide by these laws.
Well, first off, I mean, there's 2 points you made here, and I agree with both of them, but with a twist. First off, we would be better off having every county in this state stop spending money on stormwater tomorrow and devote 100% of our money towards cleaning up the north side of that dam, because it's 100 feet deep sludge.
Right.
Okay? But it's not that we should point the finger at Pennsylvania. It's the way it's delivered with a sudden inrush. You know, you all eat small quantities of food. Quantities of food have small quantities of maybe arsenic in it. You can survive it. But if somebody were to put a year's worth of it into one apple, it might kill you. The problem we have with these pollutants is they're building up, and then there's a heavy storm, and it pushes all of it over the dam at one time. And that sudden rush of pollutants and sludge is what smothers and kills the oysters and the vegetation. But I agree with you, Mayor.
I mean, you know, we have to haul sludge from our sewer plants on a regular basis, and all this stuff that's coming down from the Susquehanna and Conowingo is just building up, and it's never taken out.
That's right.
I mean, we have, you know, our neighbor town down here, New Windsor, you know, they've done away with their lagoon, the same as Union Bridge did years ago, and now it's going to cost them a lot of money to have their lagoon cleaned out and renovated. It's the restoration of that.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
And that we've already paid for, you know, those towns paid for one time before.
Absolutely, and they say, well, you have to keep doing more, you have to keep doing more. But if you're taking out 30% of the pollution that currently exists, but it's only this much of the problem, it's still insignificant. It'd be better to take out 20% of something which is this much of the problem. You see what I'm saying? And that's what we're missing right now. Any other questions?
It's like I told the young lady before, you know, this is the best form of government because when you get down there, they get smarter and they don't have any common sense as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Very good
Richard,
presentation.
I do have a question, and this kind of brings it back more to the town than the larger picture. But this distinction between the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 permits, I've never made that distinction. We've kind of piggybacked on what the county was doing up to this point. And my concern has been, are we hitching the town's wagon to what the county's doing? And thereby, if the county wants to take on the legal battle, are we also stepping into that? What I'm hearing from you is that perhaps because we are a Phase 2 permit, that the law itself that would impose the rain tax would not apply to the town? And if so, I haven't seen that in the text of the law, but perhaps that's in the regulations that I just haven't seen.
John, I've got a copy of the law right here, and I can let you make a copy of it. Have you had a
Yeah,
chance
I've
to
got
read
it. No, I've got it. but-
And there is a section which, bear with me just a second.
Sure.
There we go. On page 3, I'm looking at chapter 151 of House Bill 987. Let me bring this over to you, John, it'll be easier. Here.
I think I've got the actual law
Right here.
printed out. Here's the House bill, okay.
It says, except as provided in paragraph 2 of this subsection, this section applies to a county or municipality that is subject to a national pollutant discharge elimination system phase 1 municipal separate storm sewer system permit. Phase 1.
And what is the exception here in Phase 2? That
That's,
does not apply.
That exception is for counties or municipalities that have already implemented some kind of a stormwater remediation fee or are exempted from having to comply again.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at that. That changes my concern, because my concern is that by hitching our wagon to what the county's doing, we are also kind of being dragged along into, whatever that process ends up being. If we're exempt, then I guess the next question is, then why are we, I don't want to say we're not interested in a solution, but how does this impact the town? We can simply wash our hands of it and say at this point, the town is not responsible to impose the fee.
Let me answer that question, John. I like to make the distinction here. There's two separate issues. One is whether or not we're going to be forced to implement a tax, whether we think we need the money or not. And today, the Carroll County Board of Commissioners said, no, we're not going to raise taxes, at least not right now. The second piece, though, is the cost of abatement. And the abatement requirements from the MDE, they will continue to escalate those abatements. So whether we implement the tax or not, the cost of complying with this stuff will continue to go on and on and on. And here's what's crazy. Only 4% of our land is impervious surface. We had to treat 10% of that land, which is 0.4% under the existing plan. Now they're going to double that, so we have to treat 20% of our impervious surface, 0.2%. It doesn't make any sense. We will spend a fortune. But if you look at studies that have been produced, they're saying that when your impervious surface ratio is below 10%, it has virtually no effect on the watershed. So why would you spend tens of millions of dollars treating 0.2% when we have studies already showing that 10% may not be a problem? And there's a second issue here, too, that the bill is silent on. There is nothing qualitative about the water. It does, nothing qualitative about the demands. Water could hit your roof, come down your downspout, fall across your driveway, and in theory may still be potable, may still be drinkable. There's no requirement here that we check the water to see if it's heavily polluted before we treat it. They just want us to treat it and check the box. But this is why we're not fixing the bay. If I spend $10 million or $20 million to treat water that's not really heavily polluted, it's nearly potable, what would happen if I'd have taken that $20 million and spent it, let's say, dredging the Conowingo Dam instead? Might got 100 times the bang for the buck. This stuff is not scientifically valid.
I understand it, but I don't know that you've responded to my question, because the question has to do with whether the town is involved in imposing this tax. And then I guess, Mike, in thinking that through, if the town does nothing, will a county tax at some point apply in the town anyway? Because you make a good point. A lot of this impervious area is going to be clustered around the municipalities anyway.
Well, let me answer the question in other words. The town ultimately, the way the bill's written right now, the town has the ultimate decision-making authority. I can't make you implement a tax. Whether it's 1 cent or $1,000 per house, you have the option of saying, we don't like what you're doing, Commissioner Rothschild, we're going to do our own. That's the way the bill is written right now. Does that answer your question?
That's correct, but what if we don't do our own?
Well, if you don't do it, here's the problem. If the state continues to promulgate expensive abatement requirements, you eventually may reach the point where you can't afford to perform those abatement procedures. If you can't afford to do them, then you could be in violation of your NPDES permit and you could be fined or even suffer jail. Jail is provided for in that for us officials if we don't comply. So yeah, you run out of money, you're unable to comply, so you could be forced to tax. That's why it's so important that we understand we've got to start spending our money in ways that's smarter. I would rather see the county spend its money inside of the towns where we have a higher percentage of impervious surface. That would help you. It would also help the environment because at least we're making more of a difference. But right now, there's no ways for us to get the credits towards the renewal of our county permit. And that's the issue we need to negotiate with the Maryland Department of the Environment and the EPA. Did I answer your question yet?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. It was a very nice presentation. We got a lot to think about there, because if we jump on the bandwagon and do something before we put some thought to it, it'd be just like Congress signed a 1,100-page document on the health care bill overnight, not understanding what it is. So when
2,800.
So we want to make sure that we have some time to sort through this. But thank you very much for your presentation.
Yep, good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll go to public comments and concerns. Rec Council, anything for us tonight?
I just want to remind everybody that we have the flyer on the back inviting the entire community to our Appreciation Day. We will be having free activities, including an inflatable fun zone. We will have a 40-yard dash. It's really meant to be a family-friendly day. It is from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the New Windsor Carnival Grounds. And we will have food there, hot dogs, chips, and funnel cake. So.
And what's the date of that?
This Saturday, July 27th. And the other thing I want to bring your attention to, I don't know if you're aware, but we have several athletes through our new track and field program that will be representing the community at the Junior Olympics at the end of the month in Detroit, Michigan.
That's
so
great.
We're really excited. This is the first year for the program. We had 4 actually qualify, and so we're wishing them well and want to let everybody else know.
Okay, thank you. Good luck. Okay, does anyone else have anything for us? If not, we're going to start with committee reports. Ellen?
I don't think I have anything tonight.
Okay. Amy?
Laura?
Excuse me, Laura?
Amy's eyes got
You're
really
on the,
big.
on the opposite side. That's all right. It's the only water here I'm drinking.
There was a lamp post that was hit by a delivery truck on Main Street, and we had to contact Paul Rodkey to come and disconnect the electricity so we could use the street, but that was all.
Okay. Edgar?
I'm going to do some maintenance work on the civilians up there, and need to go up and check some stuff around the path up there, because there's different things that need to be removed. So, go
Around
check.
the walking trail up at the
Yeah.
center?
Mhm.
Okay. Is that it? Okay. Donald?
We had one of our town employees trim the bushes up at the parking lot at the square. Did an excellent job. I think it really looks much neater. And Bill has mowed the park. And Bill, Selby has got a sprayer, as you saw, and we're spraying some of that unwanted grass. But we also got an issue, really getting to be a big issue, of that vine that's creeping across. It's going to take over a meadow, so we're going to have to, any opportunity you get to mow again, we're going to try to spray some of it. Maybe we're going to. Yeah, I saw that. So we got to get a handle on that vine also. And I know we're having a little controversy right now. Jarrett has spoken with some of the people from the state about mowing. Well, we were required to mow in order to get rid of that unwanted grass. I mean, it's illegal to have that. So that's one of the reasons we start mowing. So I haven't got the name of the person yet that came out, other than the one that we already, actually you give me, Barb gave me one. So, but I'm going to be looking tomorrow again in the files and see if I can find the name of the people that came out here and told us to mow, or give us the permission to mow because of the situation we have with the grass. So we'll see where it leads. And also, last but not least, I want to certainly thank Lehigh Cement for donating all this stone down here in the meadow on that roadway. We can get back in there now without having a four-wheel drive. So I certainly want to thank them. They are a big help to the community. So that's all I got.
About your park benches, because last week, and I tell you, it was the one afternoon, it was so terribly hot. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a couple pulled down there in an SUV, an elderly couple, and the lady got out and she had 2 canes, the ones that come up on your arms, and they walked down the trail, and I kept an eye on them because it was like one of those days, almost 100 degrees, and they were down there for an hour before they came back. At 2 in the afternoon, I don't know why they didn't wait until evening to go when it was a little bit cooler, but, and in the past week, there's been a lot of elderly people in the afternoon walking, and I just, you know, the benches will really help them out a lot.
Well, we got the benches, as you know, and we got them together, and it's just a matter of getting one of our town employees the time to,
Okay.
we want to pour some pads down. And of course, we got to anchor them, so we will be getting floods again and bolt them down. So I will bring the issue up to him again.
Okay, there are 4 of them, right?
There's 4 of them.
That's what I told a couple
We've
people.
got them designated to areas where we want them.
Right.
We went out there, but just a matter of getting him to do it.
But it seems like, and Donald and I talked about it, sometimes I think we should maybe make a larger parking lot because the parking area is so congested down there now that I have some people coming over to the station and asking if they can park their cars there because there's no place to park there. And some do park at the car wash lot sometimes, so it is getting well used.
That's really a good point because once we get this other trail in, and I've come up with another alternate plan, which I spoke to Jared about, since it's a big issue of the wetlands where we have to go through next to the track, we can actually come across. It's kind of hard to explain to, you know, if you're not out there familiar with it, but we can follow the sediment ponds down along the side where we're not backtracking on the same trail and still come out. We might be losing maybe about 300 foot of the trail, where I wanted to keep where you can walk a mile within the side to park. But we'll see, once we meet with these people again, we'll see what we come up with. That won't be in the flood issue. So we'll see where that leads us.
And we did receive through POS funding $31,000 and a couple odd dollars for addition to the park, which we're not going to use yet because we're trying to see if we get this additional money from the state. So through the what do you call it, the community parks, if we get that, then maybe we can finish the rest of the trail. So we're waiting to see, but we will have to use that $31,000 before the year's up. So hopefully we'll get the other state grant, and then we can maybe finish the extension of the trail till we get finished. So I know there's still a lot of people in town that have not used the addition to the trail that was put on last year, but it's about probably 3/4 of a mile right there now.
It's 1,200 linear feet around there. Come back.
It is a nice little walk. So, okay, Amy, got the right one this time.
I did get one phone call since our last meeting. There was a sewer issue on Farquhar Street, which was the landowner's problem. Mike was called, and he took care of that for us. An invitation to National Night Out, which is Tuesday, August 6th from 7 to 9. A few invitations have been sent out, and I'll just kind of read a little bit of it. The Town of Union Bridge would like to extend an open invitation to participate in our National Night Out event. The event will be held at the Union Bridge Town Parking Lot, Reinhardt Lot, on the corner of Route 75 and East Broadway Street on Tuesday, August 6th from 7 to 9 p.m. Just to give you a little background about why we do National Night Out. National Night Out is America's night out against crime. It is designed to strengthen neighborhood support, increase crime prevention awareness, stimulate anti-crime efforts, and send a firm message to criminals letting them know that our community is organized and will fight back against crime. It's also just a good way to socialize and network and see your neighbors. So if you could come, that would be wonderful. And I would also like to congratulate Donald on his award at the MML convention for all your years of service. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. One thing I did forget to mention that last week, in one day, in like an hour, I had 3 very upset residents of the town, and we're going right straight back to skateboards and scooters again. some of our young people in this town are the rudest children you have ever seen when it comes to trying to run over people with their skateboards, running across people's porches, running across their properties, running into their automobiles. But then these children also go around and their parents say, well, you don't have anything for them to do. And it's like I said before, they have to show a little respect in order to get something. And going out cursing people, making gestures to them after they almost run into them and the people stop. And because the people are very upset, they're afraid you're going to run over somebody and kill them. So I think, you know, if these children want skateboard parks and everything in Union Bridge, they're going to have to start showing some respect. The one lady was very upset. She called this young man's parents, and the mother says, it's not my child. But then you can go on Facebook, and these children have their little skits and their little stunts they do on Facebook that they're doing jumping off of people's porches. So you can't say it's not my child or my grandchild when it's their faces that are showing up on Facebook. So I would just like to encourage, you know, these people to take a little pride in themselves, and if they want something, they're going to have to show some respect in order to get it. Because right now, I can't see the town going through the effort or the money putting in skate parks. When I was talking to the chief of police in Westminster City last week, and they got the same problems. You know, Westminster's got a beautiful skate park. Tony's County's got a skate park, and you can go to any municipality in this county, and you see the kids out on the street holding up traffic, riding in the middle of the street, and it's like, we own the street. You guys are driving your cars. You pay taxes for the roads, but you're going to have to stop and wait on us because we own it. That's not the way to get anything done. So I'm hoping it gets better. I was hoping it wasn't going to get that bad this summer, but apparently it is. It's getting really bad again. The kids are out 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And that's where I say the parents don't do their part, because at 12 o'clock at night, 15-year-olds shouldn't be out on the street with skateboards. So that's the main thing I have to say about that, but I'm hoping it gets better. I hope the parents take a little responsibility when they say that they want their kids to have something, but they're going to have to show a little responsibility also. Okay, we were going to give a convention update report tonight, but it's been a long meeting, and we will do that at our next meeting. Our council members will give an update on what they learned at Ocean City Convention. I think that's money well spent because there's a lot of good networking going on and a lot of very nice seminars. So we will give that report at our next month's meeting. And if no one else has anything, we're in line for adjournment. Or is there?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn then.
Okay.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, ayes?
Aye.
Those motion's carried. Thank you very much for showing up tonight.